What if I told you the Vikings weren't just wild warriors who raided villages? What if their true story is far deeper, full of surprising twists, and a legacy that's been misunderstood for centuries? Stick around, because today, we're going to explore the untold truths about these seafaring adventurers that will change everything you thought you knew. Forget what you think you know about the Vikings. No, they didn't wear horned helmets. That's a myth made popular by 19th century opera costumes. But their real story? It's way more interesting. From cunning explorers and traders, to the influence they had on the cultures they touched, the Vikings were much more than just invaders. So let's dive into who they truly were, and why their legacy still shapes our world today. Let's start with the raids, the part of Viking history that most of us are familiar with. The infamous raid on the Lindisfarne Monastery in 793 AD marked the beginning of what historians call the Viking Age. It was a turning point that shook Europe and branded Vikings as ruthless marauders. But here's the thing, they weren't just mindless raiders. The Vikings had a purpose behind their attacks: survival and expansion. You see, Scandinavia was harsh with long winters and limited resources. Farming was tough, and the sea offered more promise than the land. The Viking raids were strategic, targeting places with wealth that wasn't well defended. Monasteries, in particular, were treasure troves of valuable items and food. But to reduce their history to just these raids is unfair. Vikings were also skilled navigators and explorers. They ventured far beyond their homeland, reaching places like present-day Russia, Constantinople, and even North America. Yeah, you heard that right. Centuries before Columbus stumbled upon the New World, Vikings had already set foot in what we now call Newfoundland, Canada. This isn't just legend. Archaeological evidence at L'Anse aux Meadows confirms it. And here's another fascinating part: the Viking Longships. These vessels weren't just boats, they were engineering marvels of their time. Long, narrow, and incredibly fast, Viking longships allowed them to cross open seas and navigate shallow rivers, giving them a tactical advantage over their European counterparts. The craftsmanship of these ships was so advanced that even today, modern engineers study their design. But let's not forget the Viking warriors themselves. While they were undoubtedly fierce, they weren't just barbarians swinging swords wildly. Their battle tactics were calculated. Vikings used shield walls, a formation where shields overlapped to create a nearly impenetrable barrier. This tactic required discipline, teamwork, and a deep understanding of strategy. They knew how to fight, yes, but they also knew when to negotiate and when to trade. So, if the Vikings weren't just about raiding, what else were they up to? One word: trade. Vikings were incredible traders who established bustling trade routes that connected Europe to the Middle East and beyond. They brought back silks, spices, and silver, integrating different cultural practices into their own society. This exposure to various cultures even influenced their own beliefs and practices. For example, many Vikings converted to Christianity over time, either through forced conversions or gradual acceptance as they settled in new lands. The Viking trading network was immense. They traded everything from amber and furs to swords and slaves. Yes, slavery was unfortunately part of Viking society, and they were both buyers and sellers in the trade of human beings. It's a dark chapter, but important to acknowledge when discussing their legacy. Their willingness to engage in trade with cultures as distant as the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad speaks volumes about their ambition and adaptability. And here's the kicker: Viking society wasn't the free-for-all we imagine. It was structured, with a system of laws and a thing called the Thing, a local governing assembly where disputes were settled and decisions made. Imagine an open-air meeting where chieftains and free men gathered to argue their cases and reach collective decisions. It was an early form of democracy, showing that Vikings valued fairness and order as much as they valued strength. Women in Viking culture also had more rights than their European counterparts at the time. They could own property, run businesses, and even divorce their husbands. Some women, known as shield maidens, even fought alongside men, although the exact prevalence of this practice is still debated by historians. And let's not forget the legendary tales of Lagertha, a formidable warrior whose story has inspired generations. Take language, for instance. Did you know that many English words have Old Norse roots? Words like window, from vindauga, and berserk, from berserker, come from Viking language. The days of the week, like Thursday, Thor's Day, and Wednesday, Woden's Day, also show their mark on our modern calendar, and there's more. The Viking legacy lives on in place names across the UK and other parts of Europe. Names ending in by, such as Whitby or Derby, are Old Norse for town or settlement. Even the social structures Vikings put in place, such as cooperative townships and assemblies, influenced medieval governance. Now let's take a moment to clear up some of the myths that popular culture has fueled. First, the horned helmet. It never happened. Horned helmets would have been impractical in battle. The image actually came from theatrical productions in the 1800s. Vikings also weren't just savage raiders, many were farmers, fishermen, and craftsmen. The majority of Viking life was centered around sustaining their communities, not just war. And what about their appearance? Forget the image of dirty, unkempt warriors. Archaeological findings suggest Vikings were quite concerned with hygiene. Combs, razors, and even ear cleaners have been found in burial sites, indicating they took grooming seriously. Some writings from other cultures even note that Viking men were remarkably clean compared to their European counterparts, which, funny enough, helped them gain the favor of local women when they traveled. The Vikings were more than just warriors with swords and axes. They were explorers, traders, farmers, and innovators with a rich culture that influenced the medieval world more than we realize. They shaped trade routes, influenced laws, and even contributed to the genetic and cultural melting pot of Europe. Their legacy is a complex one, filled with stories of bravery, cunning, and a knack for adapting to whatever the world threw at them. By understanding their true history, we don't just break myths, we appreciate how interconnected our world has always been. If you found this eye-opening, make sure to subscribe and check out our next video for more surprising truths about ancient civilizations.